We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Welcome back to Roundtable. We are on the road out here in Southeast Texas. I'm here with the Southeast Texas Normal Leadership, Corey and Christy. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing, man? Hey, doing great. Yeah, we're doing great. We're doing really good.
All right, so, that was a great moment we just had.
Well, thank you for having us on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm glad you came out.
Yeah, and thanks for inviting. This is a nice area. Like I wish we could go 360 with the camera and show you. And while we're live, I'll probably just do it real quick. You know, it's a nice area, and it's so peaceful and calm and collect. And I'll go ahead and put the phone down now. Cool. So we wanted to catch up with you guys. I know you're going to be having a workshop, hemp workshop, coming up in the new year. So we're definitely going to get into some information, get into the information you guys wanted to kind of spill on and review on with that. And also a latest article that's come out, a recent article that came out just speaking in support of cannabis, but, you know, with a specific shield as the way to make it happen in the States is now spreading. We'll get into that later on. But let's come on back real quick. So this is the Southeast Texas. Corey, the two of you, Christy and Corey, are a part of the Southeast Texas leadership, Southeast Texas Normal Leadership. And are there any recent updates you guys have had within the last meeting? Anything new you want to shout out to the roundtable community at all?
As far as locally, there hasn't been any real major updates because of Hurricane Harvey. There's been, pretty widespread devastation. Other than our local efforts, trying to help out, that way. As far as legal developments, we're still working to get our local DA, local sheriff, and local judge to a roundtable discussion and start discussing site and release in Jefferson County. That's something that we've been pushing for a while, and we were almost to that point, and then Hurricane Harvey came, and it kind of detoured our plans, or at least put them off for a while, and hopefully here in the next month or so we can nail down our local leadership and start getting some site and release plans implemented here, even if it's for first offenders.
And of course, shout out to all of the survivors of Hurricane Harvey. Shout out to just Southeast Texas in general. Like that was a pretty big issue that happened. And I mean, we're with you out in Dallas and in the Fort Worth area. We just want to let you know, DFW. You know what I mean? That's your second home as far as we're concerned.
Right. Exactly. That's all a family. We're all family.
Yeah. The normal family extends beyond the name normal. We have a lot of coalitions that we work with and individuals that help promote and work towards our final goal of legalization. So we have a lot of allies in the field during this war on drugs.
Yeah,
well, I know you guys are up to date, and I want to let you go real quick, Christy, on the site and release that happened out in Dallas recently is now kicking effect.
December 1st. Yeah,
are we at all like in a direction with that out here in Southeast Texas?
That's what we were talking about just a few seconds ago. We're pushing towards measures that are very similar to that, similar to Houston. We actually have Houston's criminal justice division's layout of their site and release program and how they're handling their drug offenses and so forth in Houston. And that's what we're hoping to mimic here in Jefferson County because we're so close. I mean, it's something that needs to happen. If you take our numbers and match them or put them next to Houston's numbers per capita, we match Houston's, and that tells you something, that if their plan is working and has been working, because this isn't something new for Houston. The last 3 DAs, I think, have implemented some sort of a site release or some sort of a program very similar to that reduced people going to jail and taking up officers' time out on the street. So as they've worked more progressively towards it, they've added more and more stuff. And That's what we're hoping to do here in Jefferson County. It's little steps at a time. We just need to get that first step going, and that's getting our officials to a roundtable discussion and going over sign release in Houston, how it could help in Jefferson County.
Christian?
Well, I think the only way that we're going to be able to get that, then pushed to it with the elections coming up on a local level is to get other people, because if they're just seeing me and Corey go in there, they need to see other people too.
Absolutely.
They need other people to be calling, and we need them talking to our representatives on a local level as well, because that's very important. And sign release does need to be implemented. We have kids daily that are, lives are being literally ruined. And for me, instance, I lost my grants whenever I was at Lamar because I got arrested for cannabis under 2 ounces, and it was actually a quarter. But anyways, that's another story. But it does affect you. You lose your
Yeah,
grant
it
money,
does.
and so,
It affects
yeah.
our younger generation that are, striving to make a life for themselves, and just because they chose a safer alternative substance for their recreational use, they're penalized for something that could follow them the rest of their life.
Exactly.
It affects them.
And I know it might be too early to be talking about it, but I wanted to get y'all's perspective on that. Once it happens, because it's not if, it's when, or it's not, yeah, it's not if, it's when. Once or when it happens, what do you think will need to happen in terms of in response to those who've been affected already from cannabis? Like, there's going to need to be some kind of reparations. Everybody can't just
Right.
forget that.
Yeah, some sort of reconciliation for those that have served, that are possibly those that are serving time, if it's the only offense they have and they have no violent offenses or anything attached to it, and it's a possession, we should also, advocate for their release.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the law changes, it's not just changed that day, it should go into retroactive, and anybody that's been arrested within the last, 10 years, which if you're serving for 10 years for possession, that's ridiculous. Because in Texas, in 1972, they changed, they were really ahead of the game in 1972. They moved 4 ounces or less to a misdemeanor. Anything above that was a felony. Before 1972, any amount of possession of cannabis was a felony. So they were ahead of the game, just right behind Oregon in 1972, to leading the way on decriminalization. And then Texas hasn't made another major change in drug law since then. I think in 2007, the cite and release program, which an officer can use his discretion, which we're talking about now, to release you, and you show up under the same penalty of the law, you will face the judge for that possession charge, but you don't go to jail that night, your car doesn't get impounded, and so forth. And as well as the taxpayers don't pay for your the time that it took 7 officers to arrest us during Hurricane Harvey, and it's 7 hours from the time they pulled us over to the time I was released, and 7 officers for about an hour on the side of the road. And that's a lot of time that they could have been preparing for Hurricane Harvey, So, and then we end up with charges for possession of marijuana during Hurricane Harvey. It's ridiculous. So they tied us up on the side of the road. They could have just said, okay, you've got an ounce of marijuana, here's a ticket for it, be on your way, go do what you were doing, which at the time we were actually searching for a missing friend. So, it's a kick in the face to go to jail during that type of a situation.
It feels like I won't speak for you, Christy, but like it seems like an arbitrary call, and a betrayal just of the system that's there to protect us. Like, you're judging the very people that aren't doing anything wrong. And I mean, okay, under the Jefferson County, under the Texas state law,
Right.
maybe we're not necessarily abiding by the law by
Right.
protesting it, but protesting technically isn't illegal either.
No,
That's a
it's not.
First Amendment right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And also with cite and release, I think another thing that we need to look at is putting it down from a criminal level to just a civil charge, because what happens is you get these criminal charges put on your record, and then you even graduate like I did with honors, and you go in to get this, and it follows you for the rest of your life unless you have a lot of money to get it expunged off of your record, and they can still bring things up, you know.
A trap for the people in the working class, of course.
Right, exactly.
So let's go ahead and drive the discussion kind of to the other side of cannabis, which is hemp. And I have some information here. But first, I wanted you to go into it. I wanted y'all both to get into the hemp workshop you're going to be scheduled. That you're actually going to be. What is it? Hempcrete workshop that like it's going to teach you how to build and create. And
Yes.
I'll let y'all.
It's the Tiny Hemp Homes Hempcrete Workshop. And for those of you who do not know, but Tiny Hemp Homes, Tiny Hemp Houses is a company out of Colorado. John Patterson is a professional hemp builder. He's been doing it for a while. The little place he's got up there in Colorado is called the Abbey. It's been taking off in the last few years. I mean, architects, engineers, home builders, and property owners are scheduling courses with this gentleman with Tiny Hemp Houses to learn how to build with this eco-friendly environmental material that we can use to build our homes with. And we're bringing that here to Texas. Instead of having to travel 16 to 19 hours from this point, it'd be about 19 hours to get there.
Well, someone's got to be the one to make the pivot happen. Like for it to happen in Texas, people got to start stepping up, basically.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and we've heard about the homes being done in West Texas with hemp, and it's only natural to get it started on this side of on this end of the state.
Especially right now when everybody is rebuilding from Hurricane Harvey.
Absolutely.
And the great thing about hemp is that it's mildew and mold resistant.
Mm-hmm.
So if we already had all of this in our home before Hurricane Harvey, we wouldn't have to be redoing the whole home and getting everything down just to the studs.
Just to add to that, I'm
Absolutely.
reading some hemp-based facts over here. Building materials, the bracket for building materials. Hemp-based materials can replace wood and other materials used to build homes and other structures, including foundations, walls, shingles, panelings, pipes, and paint. The modern hemp building materials, hempcrete and that are lightweight, waterproof, fireproof, self-insulating, and resistant to pests.
Absolutely.
So, and like that's just the piece about building materials. We didn't even get into what type of building materials. Right. But yeah, I agree. Like we could have prevented a lot of this in Texas, the Hurricane Harvey. Not saying that anyone's truly at fault. It's just we're going to move forward and say that hemp building material, hempcrete building materials that support it should be on the table.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Some of the other benefits that I didn't mention there were it's environmentally more friendly with less use of petrochemicals. It's also cost effective. It's exceptionally quiet for interior and exterior noises. So it's a perfect sound insulation. It's also aesthetically pleasing to other materials that we're used to using, traditional materials such as wood, tile. Yeah, exactly. So it looks beautiful with that as well. It's also energy efficient. The thermal mass assists in temperatures high and low. So your walls are usually 9 inches to all the way up to 24 inches thick.
But I'm listening. I want to get into plastic alternatives because I like where you were going with it. So standard plastic is made from fossil fuels using toxic chemicals. Almost everything we buy is wrapped in cellophane, and our landfills are full of it. A variety of alternatives to plastic can be made from hemp.
Yeah, absolutely. We're right now.
I'm also reading this from informationdistillery.com/hemp.
Right.
Shout out to the roundtable viewers and listeners. If you want to read some more about the hemp information, informationdistillery.com/hemp.
Excellent. There's a push right now for green living, and they've got all these companies out that'll build you a home that is green and eco-friendly, but we're in the process of developing these materials, such as these plastics and these things that are supposed to be so much better for the environment over long-term use. Making them is in the processing of them is a problem, and hemp is not only environmentally friendly and healthy for the person living in the home, but also the person that's building the home and making the hempcrete. Whereas a lot of our stuff that we use now, our traditional materials, are actually not good for us, not good for the environment.
And let's also keep it real. It's a different discussion because we can talk about the struggle of being in the working class and the war on poverty and whatnot. But let's also remember that some of the same materials we have to use, wood, carpet, whatnot, like this material is supposed to break down after a short period of time. So to build an industry around that makes people obviously dependent on it.
Absolutely.
Exactly. You get the repeat business. But with hemp, when we're talking about the hempcrete, over years, regular concrete starts to deteriorate. People get cracked slabs. What hemp does is it petrifies, therefore making the whole system stronger. And it's
Also, while it's curing, it's also able to flex, right? So
I think that had that in relation to water when it rains. So if it's flooding in this area, it's like a sponge essentially. It'll breathe the water in, and then when the sun comes out, then it'll exhale out the water.
Well,
or am I too technical about it?
well, when it floods, I don't believe it won't absorb it because after it cures, it starts its petrifying process, and the lime actually it's a chemical reaction that draws all the water, all the moisture out of the wall. Okay. But in fact, there's a plaster that was invented back in BC that is with hemp that you apply to the outside, and it's waterproof. I mean, you're not going to have to worry about siding and all that other stuff. But you can also use your adobe, or you can put siding on the house if you want to put it on there. But it's not
but then it's a
necessary.
choice, you know what I
Yes,
mean? Then
yeah.
you don't have to pay for exterminators for termites. It's like this is natural.
Right. You're not going to have to worry about pests like termites and so forth that you would with wood, and it's a lot cheaper. It's about either equal or less than building a wood frame and wood structure home that's all wood. Drywall and all that.
And Christy, I wanted to pass the torch to you. Just the thing I wanted to also add to that. Y'all made a great point with earlier with coming out of the shell and saying that yes, it's time for us to start embracing these hemp materials. We have to learn to embrace the markets that we want. We have, like when we say we want to legalize marijuana, we have to. If you're at home right now smoking a blunt, listening to this show or watching it, well, shout out to you first. But I mean,
Exactly.
At the end of the day, you're part of the struggle at the same time. But the good news about that is you're part of the struggle, but you can do something that you can be on the good side. You can be on the right side of history and say that, well, I'm using cannabis because I know that the laws on it now are wrong. And so to take it a step further, I'm also going to be out there in the streets trying to protest to get the laws changed, and also lobbying with my local representatives, state representatives, and federal representatives. And then even go so far as to say what type of fabric can be made from cannabis, can be made from hemp. Right. And then what stores are selling it. We need to find these markets, because I'm going to tell you right now, like there was some hemp oil I was using about a year ago on my face. I have the eczema, I was born with it. And so the idea is when I use the hemp oil, I can get away with the lotion or the cream and use it like I do now. But with the hemp oil, it's just or the hemp cream, there was just nothing really, there's not really a rival. It's like, yes, this makes sense. Why wasn't I always using this?
Exactly. Also, we also have to think about how many jobs this will bring also to the table for everybody to have. Our farmers need a good crop, and that would bring in a good crop. Right now, most
farmers need to also get out of debt. They're going to need money for that.
Exactly. Our farmers are hurting. That's my business that I deal with, and I deal with farmers on a daily basis. They're hurting. Our farmers are hurting, and we need to give them their cash crop back. And
America's #1 cash crop is hemp.
Exactly.
But let's also going deeper than that. Let's also say that the natives, the indigenous, they used hemp. The Africans that came here used hemp. They used cannabis, and so there was just a culture, and I don't know if it was racism. I don't know if it was just classism. I would definitely love your takes on that. Just what was the pivot do you think that really said that we have to close in on the money, because, well, if people figure out a way to use hemp, to use cannabis in general to make money, well, then they that's just a recession-proof market right there.
I would like to answer that.
Yeah.
Business. The Industrial Revolution brought about synthetics, such as companies like DuPont. And DuPont was a major facilitator of making hemp illegal. The war, okay, being a racist or cultural or social thing was their ammunition. But that was not the goal. The goal was to get hemp made illegal. That way it couldn't be used and these companies could profit from something that they've invented. So something that you could grow and that was natural and you could sustainable. They wanted to fight against that. And that not only included DuPont, but also Randolph Hearst, which owned not only multiple newspapers on the West Coast, but also hundreds of thousands of acres of timberland.
And of course, the federal official Harry J. Anslinger, who had his, is quoted as saying marijuana makes white women promiscuous with black men, with Negroes and Hispanics. And then on top of that, what was a hypocrite because he was a prohibitionist of alcohol, which failed.
Right.
Prohibition on
Absolutely.
anything just never worked and never will.
Yeah, he got his job under some really suspicious terms. Just given to him, and like you said, the prohibition of alcohol was a failure, and they had to find a way to make the American public fear this plant, and that's where the ammunition that I was talking about a minute ago, being a race issue, and that's why everybody thinks it was a race. No, it started out as an industrial attack.
Well, it just at the end of the day, it had its major, like you're saying, it has its just major elements, key points where we're first of all, we saw in other words, the natives, we were talking about that earlier, used cannabis. The Europeans that came to this country saw that and they treated them like filthy mongrels. But the thing is, once they got a hold of the plant, once they figured out, oh, you can smoke this, oh, you can create, an industry with this. Right. It's like, well, the profit and the proceeds that could come from that, they didn't want everyone else to have that.
Of course not, especially when there's a car that could be ran off of hemp oil.
Exactly, Ford.
Well, let's not do that because that's going into my pocket. That's what the way they look at it.
Our confrontation with the indigenous people. I don't believe we knew exactly what hemp was. I mean, I feel at that point the settlers seen it as another crop that the Indians were harvesting, and they seen what use, because we used it for centuries here in America.
It was here before we were.
Yeah,
if history is correct on it.
And as soon as our people took over this land, we used it. I mean, our Declaration of Independence is written on it.
Abraham Lincoln, he was. Didn't he admit that he was a hemp smoker? They called it hemp back then because they wanted to confuse people.
I think there's 800 tons of hemp on the USS Constitution, a ship that Navy ship, historical Navy ship. The Navy used it for sails, for robes, for fatigues, for canteens, for everything. It was a canvas. That's where the word canvas comes from, is cannabis.
And we can still buy all these products still today.
It's imported, though.
But the problem, that's the problem, is it's imported, and that's why we need to change the laws so that we can have that money staying here, keeping it local within our communities and within our people.
Because what's interesting about what we're talking about? Europe's looking at us like we're jackasses because Europe's already figured it out. Yeah, legalize cannabis. Let people grow hemp. Yep. Let farmers, grow marijuana.
That's where GW Pharmaceuticals is from.
So, you know what I mean? They've already figured. It's like, well, and then I can't really I assume we're all capitalists. You can't blame people for wanting to make money off of stupidity. If you don't, Mexico's the same way. They decriminalize marijuana. Right. It's like at some point when are we? And then Canada above us. It's like, when do you figure it out?
Good question.
Well, when do you figure it out? I mean, the first step is like going out and talking about it, changing people's perspective on cannabis, and getting them educated. And I get upset, or want to get upset at people for being ignorant, but they've been fed this prohibition for so long that I try not to hold it against them too much.
At least 100 years.
Well,
2017, 170,
No,
170 years?
1937. So is whenever the Marijuana Tax Act
Okay, 30s.
started, 37.
Okay.
So, just over 80 years of prohibition, I believe, if I do my math correctly.
I
40
don't know why I
to-
thought it was 1910. I think that was back when you were right.
Oh,
Still
no,
with
no, no,
alcohol.
no. Yeah, that was alcohol. Because alcohol ended in, what, 1921? Yeah, ended prohibition.
And then, that's interesting. Okay, so the prohibitionists, they lost that war. What happened after that? They started noticing the Negroes and Hispanics that were showing up after the Emancipation Proclamation, after, of course, all of that social tension that went on at the same time period. They didn't have jobs. What were they doing? They were in clubs and bars smoking cannabis. It's like, we just to our,
Speakeasies.
yeah, to our earlier points that made on the round table, that people they were doing nothing wrong using this plant, but there became a stigma attached to the plant, and so then it made it easier for people to say, oh, those people use it, that's why they want it legal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they had Reefer Madness that came out that,
Yeah, everybody knows about that.
bringing
Yeah.
pandemonium, yeah.
The propaganda that the government's put out has brainwashed not only one generation, but multiple generations of Americans to believe this plant has no use. And the rest of the world knows it has use. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So what we're doing here is bringing the information about hemp and what it can be used for. I mean, there's over 50,000 different applications you can use hemp for. Hempcrete's just one application.
You can eat it too, by the way.
Yeah.
It's very good
But
for you.
it's one application, but when you think about it, that one application replaces drywall, it replaces insulation, it replaces plywood,
Your
it
carpet.
replaces siding, it replaces caulk, it replaces a lot of things are traditional building materials that you would use. So we feel that this would be the most beneficial application of the hemp plant in an industrial use. So that's why we're bringing the hemp workshop here. And John Patterson, his knowledge on it would blow you away.
Shout out.
And yes,
Yes.
tinyhemphouses.com. Check them out. They've got hemp workshops throughout the United States going on. You'll have to catch them when they pop up. But there's one happening right here in Buna, Texas, January 26th, 27th, and 28th. And for the cost of it, it is $175 per person. If you were to catch this in any other state, you're going to pay $395 per person. So we're not only bringing it to you, but we're also giving you more than half off.
Invest in your small markets too. Like we have a political power as entrepreneurs. We have to remember that, and as farmers, we have a political power too, and a political influence. Tell those that watch and follow, all of the movements, of course, that just go all the way in. Don't be scared to say, oh well, I'm just so used to buying a brick house, with a mortgage, you know what I mean, that I have to get insured, and you know what I mean, and I have to pay a bunch of fees, and like I have to also reinvest in someone to come check my roof out ever so often because I chose to invest in the material that they built. It's like we can break the cycle if we want to.
Yeah.
It just all comes down to education and getting informed and sitting down and researching and learning what hemp does, and which is better for your situation.
What's sad is the rest of the world looks at America as a disposable country that we throw everything and anything away after we're done with it, and that's what we have become. Our everything that we own is disposable. Basically, you know what I mean? We cycle through it, and where does that stuff go? It goes back into our land, or we burn it, or there's some sort of a waste
Pollution,
management.
yeah.
Yeah, some sort of waste management that in the end result ultimately hurts mankind. But we need to move away from materials like that. I know a lot of stuff in the houses you can reuse when you demolish them, but a lot of houses are sitting there dilapidated and falling apart. If those homes were made of hemp, those houses wouldn't be dilapidated and falling apart. They would have somebody living in them.
We're gonna, and this is a great segue into our point. I just want to say, just to add to yours, imagine if we could start building hemp houses for all those homeless veterans walking around in the streets of Southeast Texas.
Absolutely.
That would be
Absolutely.
amazing. That would definitely be amazing.
I feel that would be a project that we would love to take on with enough help and volunteers and so forth. But We want to build 15 to 20 tiny hemp homes out here in Buna. So, you know,
And, you know,
more
this
people
is
that know
the
how to
perfect,
work with it.
exactly, this is the perfect type of land for someone that, you know, has been and knows how to work independently and knows how to, you know, and then
Exactly.
if you know how to grow your own, even if you don't know how to grow crops, if you want to start a company and you just base it out here, there's hope basically with what you're saying. Having a hemp home, having just a roof over your head, first of all, is something we all need. But, you know, as we segue, so there's a recent article from the Washington Post that was presented that said veterans are key as surge of states okay medical pot for PTSD. Again, the backdrop of the nation's largest Veterans Day parade, Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo announced this month he'd signed legislation making New York the latest in a fast rising tide of states to okay therapeutic pot as a PTSD treatment, though it's illegal under federal law and doesn't boast extensive, conclusive medical research, even though it's legal medically in D.C. 28 states plus the District of Columbia now include PTSD in their medical marijuana programs, a tally that has more than doubled in the last 2 years. According to the data compiled by the Pro-Legalization Marijuana Policy Project, shout out. A 29th state, Alaska, doesn't incorporate PTSD in its medical marijuana program, but allows everyone over 20 to buy pot legally. Well, that, you know, we could just kind of skip over that. I mean, you know.
Well, the problem with that is it comes down to taxes because, like, I don't know actually in a lot where we're talking about their taxes, but in other legal states, there is a higher recreational tax than medical. So, I mean, and the deals are different. You know, you get your medical prices and versus your recreational prices, and then higher taxes too.
And well, you know, the thing is, and shout out to our roundtable listeners and viewers, of course. Thank you for watching and listening. That's always the hustle right there. The tariffs, the tax,
Right.
the fees. That's what sent us to war with England.
Yeah, that's exactly
That is
what
very
it is.
true.
And we were supposed to have broken free from that, you know, free from taxation. Taxation is theft. And here we are paying the highest taxes in the world.
The Marijuana Tax Stamp Act was what it was called originally when
Yeah.
the government was cool with it.
Yeah, and it was kind of a catch-22 at that point because you had to have your marijuana on you in order to
get the
go into
stamp.
the courthouse to get the
So
stamp.
then they'd arrest
But
you.
you were in possession of it without a stamp when you crossed into the courthouse. So there's only been, I looked it up in the last, I don't know, since I think when I looked it up it was back to 2003, but there'd only been 8 stamps that were issued. 8 stamps.
Because, you know, the government, they're very technical, they're very minute, and, you know, if they can't control it, then they only want certain people to use it.
Yeah.
But they forget, you know, you know, Immortal Technique said it, the greatest flaw that any intelligent person has is thinking they're smarter than everyone else.
Yep.
Tell me
Right.
more about the Compassionate Investigational New Drug or COMP IND program, where what was 20 people is now down to 4 people who are allowed to federally use cannabis. They can fly on planes with it, you know, and I mean,
Elvie Muska, shout out to Elvie.
Yes,
you know what I
and
mean?
Jeff.
And it's like, and of course, I say shout out to all 4 of them, of course,
Oh,
keep using
absolutely.
it. The idea is you can't you know disprove a negative that way. It's like you've now said that marijuana, or DEA keeps saying that that marijuana has no medical use. So why do you have a federal program where people can use it for that purpose?
And have a
Exactly,
patent on it. Why
exactly.
do you have a patent
And
on it
then
that
they
has
own the
medical
patent.
value?
Yeah, 6630507.
You could
Look it
easily
up.
say, you know what, let's just let the veterans use it and see and let the patients that, you know, have tried everything else, because we don't hope that people want to go through the pain that's leading them to using cannabis if it's their first time and their first experience. Now, for me as a vet, I say, you know what, you know, I shouldn't have to justify having served the country why I want to use cannabis.
Yeah.
But if we want to talk technical, no, I don't have PTSD. You know, when I use cannabis, I feel more relaxed. I feel more calm, collect, and in tune just with not just myself, but just with everyone around me. And I think it does get rid of the social anxiety when it comes to, you know, like has been said. My thing is this: it's too hard to explain what it's like to be a veteran. You know, shout out to the vets, of course. Thanks for watching and listening.
Definitely.
You know, so we use cannabis.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Our veterans served. Our veterans served our country. Many of them gave their life for freedoms and so forth. And they come home to a war on the American people. It's not a war on drugs. Drugs can be handled a completely different way than incarcerating more than any other country in the world, including South Africa during the reign that imprisoned more of their people than any other place on earth. We're 10 times that amount in statistics. So anyway, our veterans fought and then come home and have to fight the rest of their life for equal access to a medication that could help them, if not heal them, from a lot of their ailments.
A lot of veterans, whenever they come back, they will use different drugs, and what they're doing is they're self-medicating for PTSD.
Which there's definitely nothing wrong with that. I mean,
no, nothing at all.
Like it goes without. I think it was last year at the Texas Veteran Conference they talked about there being a theory that using cannabis can kind of help put the memories back together that are causing the trauma.
Right. Okay.
And I mean, now for me, someone that's been clinically diagnosed with clinical depression, like it forces me to get positive, I guess you could say. Like I find a reason. It's like I could be depressed and I could be broken down and just hate my life and suicidal thoughts, all of that, and then all of a sudden I find something funny to laugh about. I didn't used to be able to do that. Like I mean, and I mean the thing is. When I was in, it was alcohol that I was using for that, but that's a whole nother another discussion right there. So
self-medicating anyway.
Yeah,
the idea is yes, the
yeah.
self-medicating isn't the problem. It's the problem is that you don't want to let not y'all the VA it can't get the access it needs for the veterans to use it.
Self-medicating, you want to use something that's going to be beneficial to you and not going to harm you in the long run. And you should be able to make that choice on your own. You shouldn't be told that you can't have access to something that you know is beneficial to you. And if you're choosing these other drugs that are socially acceptable, such as alcohol or prescription pills, because your doctor told you that you need it, and then you start abusing them because they have that abusive tendency, they're hurting you. In the long run, it's going to cause a lot more problems than what you're trying to escape from while you're self-medicating. So being able to choose a safer alternative that is just as beneficial, if not better, than the pharmaceuticals that you're ingesting that have long-term bad side effects.
I just want to say also, 22 veterans a day commit suicide.
Oh. And that number is not including Texas,
not including
or
Texas
California.
and Cali. Thank you.
Which Texas and California are two of the three of the largest states in the United States.
The only question I ask, because
Texas, California, and Alaska is the third one. But
the only question I ask, because I wonder, they don't do us right in terms of our disability and paying us what we deserve, but they're so quick to clean up the mess once we've killed ourselves. So my question is, what costs more, cleaning up the dead body or letting us use the cannabis?
Well, they would definitely make money off of, using the cannabis for the tax purposes.
I hope I wasn't too dark just then. I'm just saying that, like the reality,
it's reality.
Is, who are we going to put more money in the pockets of? The morticians or the doctors?
The government will create a crisis or an epidemic in order to be able to pass a law or pass this bill that solves this problem. And they've come in and saved the day. That way the American people rely on the government. We don't need to rely on the government. We have the ability to treat ourselves. We have the ability to build natural, sustainable living homes and self-sustaining communities. If you create a problem, what are those people called? They're not heroes. They're the people that that actually start the fire and then come in and save the people and take credit for saving everybody. And
the coup d'état is the activity. That's what I call it.
Okay. Coup d'état.
Talk about
the setup. You know what I mean? To say let's give marijuana to a chimp and then suffocate it and then say, THC kills brain cells.
Yeah.
That's the coup d'état we're
oxygen.
talking about. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, earlier we were talking about veterans and being homeless. I work in the homeless community. And I would say at least 70-80% of the population that I run into are veterans. And as we know, most homeless people do suffer from mental illness. And that is not being treated. That's not being recognized. And if we could get our veterans more help on that level and then get them tiny hemp homes, and I mean, we could solve, lots of problems, but it does come
Passing
down to
laws,
the
yeah.
mental health
Mental
laws.
and, yeah.
Or
It
not
should-
laws, but issues and
Well,
when
yeah,
it's dealt
it
with,
shouldn't be
really.
The first step,
It
getting a
shouldn't be a
home.
criminal penalty in the United States. It should be a health issue. It's not a criminal issue, it's a health
It
issue. And we
definitely
need
is
to
a health
stop
issue.
treating it as a criminal issue.
Mhm.
And if once we start treating it as a public health issue, and I believe recently the president even said the opioid epidemic is a health issue. He didn't say it was a criminal issue. Why is that? When, let's see, they treat every other drug as a criminal issue. It was ridiculous. I don't know if you caught that or not, but
It's a cruel dichotomy. In the poor
It is.
communities, you're an addict, and you're an addict, and you're an abuser. In the rich communities, oh, you just have a problem. You're
it
going
started
through
in
a
the
tough
doctor's
time.
office, not started on
Yeah,
the street.
the hospital gave you too many pills. It's okay. We can work it out.
Let
Just
me
go to
give you this
rehab.
drug. Let me give you this
It's
drug
accepted.
instead of that one. This will
Socially
get you help you
accepted.
get off of that one. It's socially accepted,
Which
and
we could
and
change
that's
the
the
view on
difference. That's
that.
the social class difference. Is opioid addiction? They're looking at it as a health issue because majority are the upper class, and then they look at all these other drugs: crack, heroin, methamphetamines. I don't even want to put cannabis after saying those, but it's classified in those same ones, and
then
they
the
treat those
hustle.
as criminal.
Right, and then the hustle is a good percentage of the people selling the drugs are the people who have the money to be able to go buy them,
Absolutely.
or their kids.
Mhm.
Take your pick.
Yeah. And even with the working blue collar families, 80, I would say 80% that are in favor probably consume. Maybe not daily, but they consume. And those are working class people that spend their money on this recreational or medicinal, however they consume it for. And they're spending that money. That money is going into the black market. That's fueling drug cartels. That's fueling the black market. And you can't sit here and say we're going to dump more money into protecting our borders and drug enforcement and stopping these drug cartels, and not address the issue of why the drug cartels are here in the United States, because that's where the supply and demand is. So legalize, so we can either put it on a fair open trade or open free market system, or regulate and taxate it. If they're going to taxate it, I'm not for taxation, but
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's not a problem when a rich person is smoking marijuana. Oh, they're just using a little marijuana. Even in the nostalgia just of films, how they would have, like in Greece and everything, all these adult-looking teenagers that are smoking cigarettes. They might sneak beer and everything. They were okay with the culture when it was the people with money that were showing and flaunting it. But all these poor people, these Negroes and Hispanics smoking marijuana, we can't have. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of perception and culture and racism racism in general we need to get rid of. But the type of primitive behavior that inspired, reefer madness, that's what we need to eliminate, so we can get to the, now I agree with you, we shouldn't have to pay taxes on marijuana. We shouldn't.
No.
Because if we can grow it on our own, now, I don't mind paying a labor
pass
tax.
laws that allow that.
I don't mind paying a labor tax to a farmer, because I don't, I'm a city guy.
Absolutely.
That's fine. But, you know what I mean? Let's also remember, the people with the least amount of money used this plant and were able to build civilizations off of it. So it's very neutral in terms of the economic ability.
Oh yeah, and very easy for the individual homeowner to be able to take an acre of their land and grow it. An acre of hemp is pretty easy to grow. It's not very difficult. It's very climate open. It can grow in multiple different climates, and you can take an acre of that and, like, say here in the Texas wooded area of Texas, there's pine forests, and those pine forests, they cut these pines down for wood stuff. An acre of hemp is equal to 4 acres of pine wood, thick forestry pine wood. So a regular homeowner could take an acre of land and produce several tons of hemp hurd a year, and use that as an extra income.
and instead give that back to the ecosystem instead of building or growing trees that you chop down that hurt, that, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
affect the
absolutely.
climate, that,
Yeah.
you know, affect, and then of course, depending on what time of the year it is, now you don't know how much you're gonna be able to regrow.
Right, right.
Well, we're talking about taxation. Way back, weren't you able to pay your property taxes with hemp
Yes, you could.
that you grew on your property?
Back in the 1600s, I believe it was 1600s or 16th century. I can't remember, but you could actually pay your taxes with hemp.
Were you required to have to grow a certain amount?
That was during
The war?
Hemp for Victory, during World War II, the Hemp for Victory campaign. If you were a farmer and you had viable farmland, you had to grow hemp for the war efforts. If you didn't, you were penalized. They didn't call
So it was a law to grow it,
Yes,
basically.
yes.
It was not really, there was no law written, but if you didn't grow it, it was they tacked, it's not a fine, it was more of, they didn't call it a fine, but they didn't want to say they were penalizing them for not growing it, but you were heavily taxed that year, you know, for not growing it. Yeah, some sort of a monetary value was taken from the farmer for not growing it. So when it benefited, you know, for America to defend itself at war, it was okay to grow it. But as soon as the war was done, better not catch a seed. And a lot of people don't know this, but the National Guard, one of its main priorities after it was implemented was to eradicate the hemp plant growing on the sides of the highways. Because of Hemp for Victory, there was a lot of cross-pollination and seeds growing, because when farmers grow it, it can cross-pollinate up to 20 miles. So that seed or that cross-pollination, and it's growing wildly, it's growing wildly in Nebraska and Kentucky and that area
I call it
for centuries.
bitchweed.
But why would you want to destroy a plant that's positive? You know, I could see if
Money.
it's weed, if it's like actually,
Money.
you know what I mean? Like I could see if it's like weeds growing out of the grass, killing the color of the grass.
Money.
You know what I mean?
Not this image. That's please. The image of the belief. This image has been indoctrinated into our nation to instill fear and demonization of those that consume or even would open their mouth and talk about it. You're automatically bad. But times have changed. We're really flipping. The majority of Americans now know that cannabis is not bad for you. Hemp is a viable, rebuildable, renewable source, and medical and recreational should be legal. I mean, we've got a majority of the population, over 80%, in the latest Gallup poll, I believe, is in support of some sort of legalization or decriminalization, and that's more than ever before. So we're on our way to changing major stuff, even though Sessions is saying they're fixing to buckle down on marijuana.
Doesn't seem like people are listening to him.
No, nobody's listening to our administration because
You
it's,
can't take them seriously.
no, not right now. It's not, and I don't want to say anything, negative about it, but I can't say anything positive. I'll just leave it at that.
But my thing is, as we bring it back to cannabis with the veterans, okay, all we've been saying since the very beginning is that cannabis, should be medically legal. If we're not ready to have the, shout out to our roundtable viewers and listeners. If we're not ready to have the recreational discussion, I think we're more than ready. It's way overdue. But
Do you like alcohol and wine?
veterans using medical marijuana veterans using cannabis in general, should be the cornerstone for why everybody should be using it.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the people who fought for our freedoms, and that is a freedom that we should have. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to grow our own medicine.
Deny them anything.
Yes.
They put their life on the line and are still suffering from not only the vaccinations and the stuff that the military gave them, Agent Orange and other shit. It's not only what our government subjected them to, but also the mental and physical stress that they endured during war. They come back to be shunned for our VA to not have the absolute best medical facilities and staff and so forth for our veterans. That's how it should be, but it's not.
But it's not.
and denying them access to medicine that could greatly benefit them. It's pitiful the way we treat our veterans.
And you can't have it both ways, VA. You can't give us terrible health care and then tell us we can't use cannabis.
Yeah, exactly. But I would love to start. We have a veterans outreach for Texas Normal. David Bass is the head director of that, and we're wanting,
shout out to David.
Yes, David. But we're wanting to get one for here centralized, located here locally, and start our own veterans assembly or a veterans group with Normal, and that way they can represent our veterans here.
Right.
I know the American Legion came out in support in favor of medical use for veterans using it, and our VFW, all the VFW people I've talked to have been in favor. I haven't talked in front of the VFW yet, but that's our next step, is to go talk to our VFW in our American Legion Hall and
start a veterans
Absolutely.
outreach program in the Southeast Texas Normal. So if you are in the Southeast Texas area, if you are a veteran, you're interested in getting active, contact us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and I was just going to say, like, especially in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, like there were homeless veterans before that happened, but the idea is
There's more now.
Yeah, there's just more now, and then like this is why you need these type of programs.
Yeah.
Are there any more final thoughts for the roundtable?
If you would like to contact Southeast Texas Normal, you can contact us at setx.norml@gmail.com. If you would like to contact us about the Hempcrete Workshop, you may contact Corey Mendez, myself, or Christy Mendez. And the email is cmendes7888@gmail.com. It's my personal email. It's something that we've been striving to get up and going here in Southeast Texas, is the knowledge of hemp. So it's not associated directly with our Normal chapter. That's why it's a different email address. But because we're paying John Patterson to come down and do this, so it's not done as a normal event because it's come out of our pocket. So that's the difference.
We appreciate you, the two of you, both of you. Shout out to Corey and Christy. Shout out to Southeast Texas Normal. Thanks for coming on the roundtable. I mean, like, this is a real issue. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that this is only, first off, this is only the beginning. Like,
yes.
The next step, of course, is education,
Mm-hmm.
and the next step after that should be application of the education.
We're already through step one. We're at educate. That's all we've been doing.
Absolutely.
And we've won majority. So now the next step. What was number 2?
Application. That's changing
laws, getting these people that are in favor politically active and getting them to contact the representative. If the representative isn't in favor, get one in there that is. Change them, get them out of office, get somebody more compassionate, more friendly to changing the laws, because we don't need age-old mindset of cannabis and marijuana. We need fresh minds in there that understand the benefits of it and are ready to change the laws, and that's getting our people active. Contact your local leaders. Step 3.
And well, just to add to that, if you have any problems, roundtable, shout out to our roundtable viewers and listeners. The Washington Post is telling you who to bring with you. Bring a veteran to that office,
Absolutely.
to that local, that state,
Please.
that federal office, and say that we need to change these laws.
Every one of us know a veteran.
Yes.
Everybody knows a veteran.
If you can't get out to see them, make calls, make emails
Yeah,
to your
a lot of
representatives and tell them how you feel and what you want.
Letters and emails are great. They represent a great deal. Representatives see those letters as 10 constituents. Emails are like 3 constituents. Face-to-face is worth 20 constituents. So when you go and see them, they're looking at it like that. Okay, this person took time out of their day to come down and see me. 20 people that they know, they're gonna have influence over those 20 people that they know that they're going to talk to about me. Okay, so an email is worth 10. And so forth. So they look at it like that. So you want to email them. A handwritten letter is really good. Like I said, that constitutes for at least 10 constituents. But contact them daily. Don't just contact them once, but follow up with them. You know, get them to if they send you back a automated message, which they will every time, they'll send you back an automated message. Keep replying to them. That's the thing about email is you're going to get an automated message. When you walk into their office, they can't give you an automated message. Call, make an appointment. You know, have them expecting you. Don't tell them what you want to talk to them. Tell them you're wanting to talk about social and economical issues. That way they're not afraid to talk to you. Don't tell them you're with Normal. Don't tell them you're with an organization for the reform of any kind of marijuana laws.
Do a little research. See how they voted and say, I appreciate how you voted on this bill because da-da-da-da-da, and then, but why did you vote no on, you know, this bill for medical cannabis?
That's constructive criticism.
Or why did you, like Pete Sessions, why did you deny there to be some kind of discussion or vote on it?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. So that's good. You know, find 2 points that you can agree with, and then one that you disagree with, and find out why they did it, and you know, press them on some of the other issues. And a lot of us aren't single issue voters.
No.
Legalization of cannabis or changing the laws is not our only issue. We have other issues that, in fact, if we did change the laws on marijuana, that those would be affected as a trickle down effect. So I call it cannabis trickle-nomics. But no, so those other social and economical issues will be impacted if we change the laws, but we are also concerned about those other issues, and we want to find out what they plan to do to change those issues if they're not willing to step out in the line and support open legalization or some sort of effort to show their support for legalization or for access.
And as we close out on the topic too, let's also remember that we need to be looking at the background of the politicians. We need to also be looking into their pockets. That money,
Yes.
that's our money that's in their
Yes.
pockets. So we need to be saying, well, who donated to your campaign? You know what I mean? And what do
Follow
they
the
represent? Exactly. Follow the money.
And don't support those people. Don't give them your money.
Yeah.
Don't go to their businesses.
I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I won't go to Discount Tire because of their
Fuck
500.
discount tire. Excuse me. Fuck discount tire company.
Yes.
Yes, $500,000 again towards anti-marijuana campaigns.
I will not buy Budweiser beer.
Anheuser-Busch.
I've been buying Bud. Is that Bud Light? Is that okay?
No, it's
No.
been anything made
Okay.
by
Okay.
Anheuser-Busch.
Fuck Bud Light.
Anheuser-Busch
Anheuser-Busch.
also donated $500,000
Yes.
towards anti-marijuana legislation.
I'm just giving up alcohol.
You don't have to do
I like to
that.
support local
You don't have to go
breweries.
that far.
Local craft. We're talking about wanting to, bring cannabis into legalization. You could bring it into a craft market just like you do beer and wine, and there's nothing wrong. I support local craft beer breweries and stuff.
Oh, of course, support your
And
small business.
So yeah,
Cannabis
we
and
won't buy that
hops
alcohol.
cannabis and hops are like in the same family.
Yes, they were actually considered in the same family for the longest time, and they still are cousins of each other. That's the only plant you can graft. If you've ever grafted a plant, you can take clipping of one plant, add the other plant to it, and graft it. That's the only plant cannabis will continue living after it grafts onto it is hops. And hops, the bottom part of the plant is hops. It'll continue growing just like hops, and the top part of the plant will continue growing like marijuana. It'll never bud.
Just an experiment.
Yes, but it's graftable. It'll continue growing. So they're very close cousins.
Well, we appreciate you guys on the round table. We're gonna go ahead and let
Thank
you guys
you.
get out of here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again, shout out
work.
to the round table community. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll be
Thank you
back
so
next
much.
time.
Thank you.
Stay woke.
Southeast Texas Normal.